Hey guys, what's up? This is Merton, and welcome to my Albums of 2024 video. Yeah, we've had some pretty good ones this year. So before I get into that, I actually want to make a couple of updates to my previous year's video of my fun and favorite albums of 2023. I got to make one addition to my favorites list, and that would be Scar Symmetry's The Singularity Phase 2 Zenitaph. I kind of slept on this album stupidly because I love me some Scar Symmetry. They're one of my all time favorite melodic death metal bands with a little bit of that neoclassical twist, thanks to their main guitarist Per Nilsson. Tripping over my own words here. Yeah, Swedish names are hard. But yeah, I almost forgot about this album though, or almost forgot to listen to it earlier that year. So yeah, I got a chance to listen to it earlier this year, and yeah, I gotta say it was very well worth the wait. I mean, it took way too goddamn long, but hey, it's still a pretty solid album. Songs I would recommend off this album: Chrononautilus, Scorch Quadrant, Reichsfall, Digiphrenia Dawn, Soul Scanner, and Xenotaph. And I also want to make one change for one album that I originally had as my as one of my fun albums, and that would be Sleep Tokens' "Take Me Back to Eden." Not long after I started, trying to dig into the meat of this album, I found myself listening to their previous stuff, like "This Place Will Become Your Tomb," "Sundowning," and then the two EPs before that, aptly named "One" and "Two." And then they quickly became one of my favorite bands, so I had to move Take Me Back to Eden to my favorites of 2023, as if that should be any surprise, since in past streams I kind of talked a bit about Sleep Token here and there, but hey, that's what good music does to a person. You get the you get them talking about your stuff there. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and start with the lone album that I have on my fun section. Starting things off with Mushroomhead, Call the Devil. Now, I gotta say this, I wasn't even sure if I was even gonna originally include this as a fun album because well, to be honest with you, my expectations for this album were actually kind of low. But I'll get into a little bit of my backstory with this band. I've been listening to these guys for, yeah, as long as I've been listening to metal in general, so going on 20 years. I distinctly remember getting this orange MP3 mix CD that had a bunch of bands, most of which I still listen to, like Slipknot, Korn, Fear Factory, Deftones, Alice in Chains, Nonpoint, Theory of a Dead Man, Pantera, Metallica, stuff like that, and of course Mushroomhead. That only had two of their songs on there: "Sun Doesn't Rise" and "Solitaire Unraveling," and I absolutely love both those songs. And then over the years, I started listening to more and more of this band, and then I quickly got some of their albums as some of my favorites, like Super Buick, M3, and 13. I still think that those are some of their best, if not their best, albums in their entire catalog. And then Save Your Sorrow came out not long after I started really getting into him, and I thought it was an okay album. I thought it was pretty good, despite the fact that J-Man had left the band about a year or so after the release of 13. And then let's see, Beautiful Stories for Ugly Children came out a couple of years after that, and I heard a lot of people really wasn't into that album, and yeah, I really wasn't that crazy about that album either. I think there was only like two songs that I kind of like on it, "Come On" and "Dark Days," I think. But then we had what was it, "Righteous and a Butterfly" a few years after that, and J-Man came back. So all's right with the world, right? Well, unbeknownst to me, the next few years after that album released, things started to spiral out of control for the band. Waylon Ravis, who was brought in to take over for J-Man since his departure, he left the band. Tommy Church, who only played guitars for that album, Righteous and the Butterfly, he also left. But I think the two lineup, well, the two other members that left were ones that I think hurt the most. Schmatz, the keyboard player who's been there since the very beginning, yeah, he left. In my honest opinion, I think Schmatz is one of the most integral parts of Mushroomhead's sound. And then, of course, the big one, Jeffrey Nothing, original vocalist, does all the clean stuff, maybe a few screams here and there. Yeah, he left the band too. So, yeah, they scrapped a new lineup together, and then they brought out A Wonderful Life in 2020, and I just gotta say it. That album is the catharsis of the band's catalog, and for any metalhead out there that just happens to be watching this, you'll probably know what I mean when I say it's the catharsis of a band's career. Considering that I'm talking about Machine Head's catharsis, which, if you know, you know, it's fucking terrible. I mean, there's only like two songs that I kind of like off of A Wonderful Life, and even then, I just consider them tolerable at best. So yeah, my expectations for this album right over here were pretty low, and then they started putting out a single, and I sat down and listened to it just out of curiosity, and I actually kind of liked it, believe it or not. I mean, I wasn't going to put it on the same pedestal as I would 13 or Super Buick or anything else like that, but I'd say it's getting kind of close to that I don't know, almost Savior Sorrow-esque kind of vibe. And then they put out another single not long after that, and I thought that one actually sounded pretty good. And then before I knew it, they had this album come out, and I sat down and listened to it all the way through, and I gotta admit, there's some songs on this album that I actually do like a hell of a lot more than on the previous album. Though my one issue with this album, and I know this is a bit of a personal gripe, it's with the vocals. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Steve Rockhorst or Scott Beck, who is their most recent vocalist, because those two guys can sing. The problem is that with some of these songs where they're both singing, it's kind of hard to tell who is who. Like they're just indistinguishable from one another. I mean that's why I think that J Man and Nothing was just the dynamic duo for Mushroomhead, because they sounded unique, or they sounded different enough amongst themselves, and they had their own roles to fulfill. But these two, I mean, yeah, they could definitely do the same things that both J-Man and Nothing were doing. Maybe not quite on the same caliber as Nothing with his clean vocal style, but I guess they're pretty good for what they are. It's just you kind of put the two of them together and have them do the same thing. It's kind of hard to tell who's exactly who. At least at my ears, though. But yeah, that aside, some songs I actually do kind of like off this album. I'd say Eye to Eye, Fall in Line, which was the first single that dropped for this album, Emptiness, Prepackaged, which was the second single that dropped for this album, Hallucination, Hideous, and Torn in Two. The other songs, I really didn't pay mind to most of them, but there's two songs in here that I actually really don't care for. The first one being the aptly named We Don't Care. I mean, I tried sitting down and listening to that, and I don't know, I just really couldn't get into it. And then the other song, which is the album closer, Doom Goose. Now, I will give the band credit for this. At least they didn't commit the same mistake they did on the previous album, where they went, I'd say, a bit overboard with the choirs and stuff. Having, was it a choir open up the album, and then having like two closing tracks or whatever it is with nothing but choirs. At least they kind of fixed that with the album closer here, but at the same time they didn't. Instead of using choirs, they got a fucking goose. I mean, you can hear it throughout I'd say about like half of this song or this closer or whatever. And I'm all for bands experimenting and whatnot, but I just sat there and listened to it, and I was just like, wait, what the fuck is this? I was just sitting there and just disbelieved, just wondering exactly what it was I was hearing. Nah, nah, but issues and all that kind of stuff aside, and those other songs that I mentioned that I actually do kind of like I said, it was kind of hard for me to put this on the fun side of things, but yeah, I caught myself jamming those other songs that I had mentioned. I actually do kind of like them, but it's just way much different from the Mushroom Head that I knew growing up. You get so you know stuck to a particular sound for so long. It's like the slightest change to it, and everything just is just like, whoa, what's going on here? This ain't the same band that I grew up with, but I mean, credit where credit is due. These guys, they're pretty talented. They managed to put out a pretty good album, in my opinion. May not be their absolute best, but I'd say it's a hell of a lot better than their previous one. That's for damn sure. So yeah, Mushroomhead, Call the Devil. Which then leads us into the favorites section. So we're starting this one off a little bit light, kind of, and that is with Caligula's Horse, Charcoal Grace. Now, I'll admit this is my first time actually hearing of this band and listening to this band, and I gotta say, I actually dig it quite a bit. It's got this nice progressive metal swing to it, kind of like I don't know, kind of Dream Theater esque, sort of, without all the crazy atypical prog elements. Actually, I shouldn't say like Dream Theater. I think it's more Between the Buried and Me ish. And hey, I love me some Between the Buried and Me. They're probably one of my all time favorite prog metal bands. Alaska's best album. So is Colors. Don't at me. No, no, no. But Caligula's Horse. This is a bit of a new one for me. Yeah, I kind of like that sort of progressive bounciness that they got going on here, and the vocalist. I gotta say, he actually sounds really, really good. Um, yeah, there's not really a whole lot I could really say about this. I mean, I could start listing off some of my favorite songs, whether it be Gollum, World Without, The Storm Chaser, but then I'd just be writing down the whole damn album. At this point, just throw a dart and whatever it lands on, just jam this, just jam the song, or just jam this whole album from start to finish. It's really good progressive metal fun. So yeah, Caligula's Horse, Charcoal Grace. All right, so next up on my favorites list is also another band that I just started listening to recently, and that is Evergrey, Theories of Emptiness. Still kind of keeping with the whole progressive metal, you know, style, but kind of much like Caligula's Horse. The vocals is primarily clean, but the guitars are just all hefty, just really heavy, really bouncy, really groovy. Of course, it doesn't help that this album was mixed and mastered by Nolly. You know, former bassist of Periphery. Nolly Get Good drums, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, production and all that kind of stuff aside, I honestly, I kind of listened to this album a little bit after it came out, and then I almost forgot about it. So I guess in kind of an attempt to sort of pad out this 2024 year end list, I went back and started keep a closer eye on some releases for the year, and yeah, I remember listening to this album and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna give this another spin, and yeah, it's really, really good in my honest opinion. All those things I use to describe this is pretty accurate. Let's see, favorite songs. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. Like the last album, I started writing stuff down, and then I I found out that I had almost damn near the entire album written down, so I just had to delete all that. So I mean, some that I could probably just pick out. I'd say "Falling from the Sun," "Misfortune," "To Become Someone Else," "Say," "We Are the North." That's Yeah, there's a lot of really, really good songs on this album. Very, very heavy riffs, very, very emotional vocals and lyrics and whatnot. This is, yeah. Something tells me I'm probably gonna have to start thumbing through this band's discography, and yeah, maybe I might maybe I might find some more albums that are just as good, if not maybe better than this. Not saying this is a bad album by any means. I mean, hell, it's on my favorites list for a reason. So Yeah, Evergrey, Theories of Emptiness. And now for something completely different here. Peeling Flesh, the G Code. Yeah, yeah, it's about time I included a little bit of a slam on this list. Yeah, you thought I was gonna be starting this one off, or just rather keeping this thing going with just light and pretty stuff, right? Nah, you should know. Whenever I listen to metal, 9 times out of 10, I go for the heaviest shit possible, and this album is, well, one of the heaviest things possible. It's just, yeah, I heard about Peeling Flesh in passing earlier this year, but I really didn't start listening to them until about August. Yeah, early August or so. Um, and then before I knew it, I wound up buying their 3-year Peeling Spree compilation, which has all the stuff that they've done before this album. You know, there's a lot of really fun gangsta groove slam songs on in their whole catalog. I mean, you play the intro to Make a Move. You know, I'm definitely throwing hands. No, that's all that's all this band really is. Just like fun gangsta groove slamming death metal. And honestly, I really couldn't ask for anything more. You know, just let's see. What are some songs that I could recommend off of this album? It's kind of weird that I don't usually mention intros to albums, but I have to in this case. You know, it's just it opens up with what sounds like a little news clipping of something that happened at a fast food place, and then heavy ass riffs come in, and then it just bookends with this little little snippet of EA Ski's "I'll Blast If I Have to," going over this very simple breakdown. Yeah, that's the one thing you're probably gonna have to come to expect with Peeling Flesh. Expect a lot of rap samples scattered throughout some of the songs. I mean, going back to Make a Move, they had what was it, parts of Sinister Funk by Al Capone on there, and that's how actually I found out about Al Capone. Yeah, it's kind of funny actually. But yeah, Shoot to Kill's another really good one. Skin Blunt, the other half of the interlude off this album. I kind of like this part a little bit more just because it's got the heavy ass guitars going on. Barbarianism's really heavy, sounding song. The Fucking. Some of these titles, I swear. And of course, the G Code, which has a guest appearance from Steve Marois and Alex Arion from Despise Icon. And hey, I love me some Despise Icon. I wish those guys would get back together and give us another album. I mean, they just got back about 2015, 2016-ish or so, and they started putting out some stuff. But yeah, if you're looking for just stupid fun, heavy ass slams with that little bit of gangster groove goodness, then I would definitely suggest the G Code by Peeling Flesh. In keeping up with the slammy goodness, we now have Rendered Helpless, From Nothing Comes All. Man, I remember getting into this band, or rather, it's a one-man solo project by I want to say his name is Alex. I can't remember his last name though, but I do know he's the vocalist of Organectomy, and I love me some Organectomy. Just straight up ferocious New Zealand slam. Yeah, you could say the same thing about Rendered Helpless, which, it's funny. I got into the solo project before I actually got into his immediate band. But yeah, the album that kind of sold this project for me was Suffer Seraphim, and hey, I love that album. I mean, you put on the song Transhuman Dread. Oh, it's so good. And I could definitely say the same thing about this album. It kind of shares some parallels with Organectomy, just straight up heavy ass riffing, just pummeling drums, and Alex is just doing his just guttural vocals of shrill shrieks and stuff. But I'd say Rendered Helpless has some more atmospheric stuff going on compared to Organectomy. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I could take either one at this point. Just give me some good music and I'm set. Songs I'd recommend from this album: Through Whales of the Abyss, Where Death May End, So Walk the Cyclical Hell, For It Is All the Same, Breathe the Ash, For It Is All You Deserve, Desperately You Beg, Emperor, and From Nothing Comes All. So Yeah, if you're looking for some nice atmospherics to go along with your just brutal slam, then I would definitely suggest "From Nothing Comes All" by Rendered Helpless. And we go from one nothing to the nothing that is by Fit for an Autopsy. Man, I love me some Fit for an Autopsy. Process of a Human Extermination, Hellbound, Absolute Hope, Absolute Hell, The Great Collapse, and even their previous album, Oh What the Future Holds. Just it's really, really good modern deathcore, if you're into that kind of stuff. With some little bits from Gojira, mainly the harmonic scrapes, which I'm guilty of doing. Well, hell, a lot of us are guilty of doing that kind of shit. But no, I'd say that this is definitely a bit more melodic in some areas. Still really, really, really good riffage, really good drums. Joe, is just doing really awesome vocals, whether it be the harsh stuff or even some clean stuff, which I believe they started doing that since the Great Collapse and onwards, if I remember correctly. It's been a minute since I went back and listened to some older Fit for an Autopsy. I might have to fix that actually. But yeah, I mean, I could definitely recommend this album. Songs that I would definitely pick from here: "Hostage," "Savior of None," "Ashes of All," which is it's got a really nice melodic death metal opener of a riff. "Weaker Wolves" got a really nice groove to it. "Red Horizon," yeah, that song does get pretty heavy in an emotional sense. Lurch, Lower Purpose, and Lust for the Severed Head. So yeah, if you're looking to get your fix of modern melodic deathcore, then I would definitely suggest the Nothing That Is from Fit for an Autopsy. So next up, we have a twofer with the Disembodied Tyrant, the Poetic Edda, and the Tower Part 1. Now, before I get into this, I actually want to let you in on a little something here, and I know this is probably going to piss some people off. For the past few years or so, I really wasn't the biggest fan of Lorna Shore's more recent albums. And I'm talking stuff like, I think it was Immortal, and I Return to Nothingness, and Pain Remains. There was a point where I really didn't latch on to the whole, symphonic, blackened deathcore, because honestly, I'm not really that big into black metal. I mean, I don't mind some elements of it being sprinkled in here and there, whether it be a blast beat of sorts or, these really high chords that are being strummed over a simple little drum pattern, or those shrill type of type of vocals right over there. Yeah, this is the closest you're ever gonna hear me doing any kind of metal vocals at all. Is just that really, really bad yeah, that was fucking terrible. Don't hire me as a vocalist, please. I do not have the pipes for that. No. But going back to this, I don't know. I just really didn't latch on to the whole blackened deathcore thing. Um, but I guess because of another friend of mine in V2ing, I actually started listening to a little bit more of this band and Lorna Shore's more recent stuff by proxy. And before I knew it, I kind of started to get those the previous two Lorna Shore albums at least, and I Return to Nothingness and Pain Remains. And originally, I really didn't like them at first, but they kind of grew on me, which explains why I have these two on this on my favorites ranking. Yeah, the best way I could probably describe Disembodied Tyrant is that it's kind of like Lorna Shore, but the riffs are much more varied. There's a lot more, technical stuff going on in there. And hey, I love me some, really, really good, intricate riffs, depending on the songs or the sections of songs or whatever. But hey, I just love me some good riffs. And I think Disembodied Tyrant has got a pretty good selection of some pretty good riffs. As for songs I would probably recommend from either of these EPs, God, all I can really say is just listen to these two. There's some really, really good stuff in here. If you're into that, symphonic black and deathcore, then I think you guys will feel right at home with the Poetic Edda and the Tower Part One by Disembodied Tyrant. I gotta wonder when Part Two is gonna be coming out. Maybe next year. Next up, we have Primal Code, Opaque Fixation. Now, this is a bit of a newer band for me, and these guys have been around for a minute, and all I can really say about this band is that it's old school death metal worship, but it's all about just pummeling riffs, just like heavy ass beatdown kind of riffs, not like body snatch or spite type of a beatdown riffs. No, when I say old school death metal, I do mean old school death metal. Those kinds of beat downs of riffs. It's got a really nice hardcore groove going on. The guitars are nice and chunky sounding. The vocals, they're about as they're about as primitive as you can get, but God love them. I still like just really good old school death metal vocals. Let's see, songs I would probably recommend from this album: Inapsid, I hope I said that one right. Derelict, Hive, IWL, which I think it's incompatible with life. Uh, that's kind of brutal. Terminal and Stuck. So if you just want some meat and potatoes, old school death metal worship with that nice bit of hardcore groove thrown in for good measure, then I would definitely recommend Opaque Fixation by Primal Code. All right, next up we have Dark Tranquility, End Time Signals. Now, it's no secret, I love me some melodic death metal, but these guys I didn't get into until about a few years ago. And this is a band that I should have gotten into many years before that. The same time I got into bands such as In Flames, Soilwork, maybe a little bit of Arch Enemy, but mostly their older stuff. At the Gates. This is one of those like OG melodeath bands. It's yeah. Again, it's one of those I should have gotten into a long time ago. But I started listening to more and more of their stuff. I mean, I've heard them in passing, but I really didn't start listening to them until about like a few years ago. I think the only albums that I got from them is let's see, Projector, Haven, Damage Done, which I think a lot of people consider that to be the best album in their entire catalog. Let's see, Character and Fiction. Now, those are the only Dark Tranquility albums that I do have, and this one as well. I actually don't have how many other albums did I put out in between Fiction and this? Was it like one or two? I think Atoma or whatever that one was came out before this. Anyways, yeah, the OGs doing it once again. They still got it after all these years. Just great melodeath riffing, really awesome vocals. Whether it be the harsher stuff or some of the cleaner stuff, nice atmosphere building with the synths. To kind of give the songs some really cool textures. God. Let's see. Favorite songs, I'd say Unforgivable, Not Nothing, Drowned Out Voices, Enforced Perspective, and Our Disconnect. So yeah, if you're wondering, if these melodeath legends still have it after, what, 30-something odd years, and then worry no more with End Time Signals by Dark Tranquility. All right, next up we have Umber Vitae with Light of Death. Now, this is a band that I started getting into somewhat recently. This is considered a bit of a super group. Let's see, we got Mike McKenzie, aka Gunface, guitarist of The Red Chord. Greg Weeks, bassist of The Red Chord. Sean Martin, formerly of Hatebreed, on guitars. John Rice, or the Charn, on drums. Formerly of Job for a Cowboy and currently of The Red Chord. And the big one, which Jacob Bannon of Converge. I mean, that already sounds like a pretty kick-ass super group right over there. And yeah, this band in general is kind of everything you come to expect from those other band names alone. Just you got Red Chord style riffing in a way without without too much technicality that the Red Chord is known for. with Jacob Bannon just doing his stuff as he normally does with Converge. Just well, not quite as manic on the vocals, but you know he's still doing what he does best. You know, the album's just got just straightforward, but still pretty solid riffing. Lots of groove and stuff going on. Gets pretty speedy at times with the occasional blasts and stuff. But hey, let's see. Songs I would definitely recommend from this album. I'd say Clear Cutter, Anti Spirit Machine, Past Tense, Empty Vessel, and Nature versus Nurture. So yeah, I think it's been a minute since I last had a supergroup on, well, any of my lists actually. But if I hadn't, I'd say this is probably the first time. So yeah, if you're looking for a pretty kick-ass supergroup that has those elements of the red chord mixed in with the Converge or Converge in general. Yeah, I don't know why I said the Converge. Anyways, Light of Death by Umber Vitae. Go listen to it. All right, next up, we've got a death metal legend with Nile. The Underworld Awaits Us All. Now, Nile is another band that I've heard in passing. I've heard maybe a few of their songs in the past, but I really didn't start listening to them until maybe about like a year or two ago. And yeah, this is another death metal band that I really should have been listening to a long time ago. Just blitz of drums, guitars, vocals, you name it, all with that Egyptian flair, which Nile is known for throughout all of their songs. You know, they always stick with the whole Egyptian theme and other themes, but it's mostly Egyptian, and it really plays into this band's sound very much. Yeah, let's see. I remember getting into these guys when Annihilation of the Wicked, well, with Annihilation of the Wicked, you know, Sacrifice into Zebek, Lash of the Slave Stick. You know, there's a lot of really awesome songs off that album, and a lot of people consider that album to be the band's best, and I can definitely hear that. And then it wasn't long after that I picked up was it Those Whom the Gods Detest. I actually need to listen to some of their other stuff, like you know, Gates of Sethu. I think that's what that one was. Vile Necrotic Rites. Maybe go a little bit further back than that. Black Seeds of Vengeance, or you know, Ichthyphallic and all that, you know, goodness. But yeah, this album, despite some of the lineup changes, with the only sole original member being Carl Sanders, who he's the guy. You know, he is the guy for Nile. And of course, George Callias is still doing his thing behind a kit, just beating the absolute shit out of it any chance he gets. But God, he's he's such a god tier drummer. You know, at least in, you know, death metal, he's such a god tier drummer. Yeah, even with some of the new vocalists and new guitarists that they had on this album, it still sounds distinctly Nile. Let's see, songs I would recommend: Stellae of Vultures. I hope I said that first word right. Oh, this one's gonna be a mouthful. Hopefully not in the wrong way. Chapter for not being hung upside down on a stake in the underworld and made to eat feces by the four apes. They say it a couple times in this song that they will not eat it. I don't think anybody in the right mind would. I don't even think Travis Ryan from Cattle Decapitation would, even though there's a couple songs where this. God love that man. Let's see. Nakata. I hope I said that one right. The second, Enter the Golden Age, Overlords of the Black Earth, Under the Curse of the One God, and The Underworld Awaits Us All. Yeah, if you're looking for some good, just ferocious death metal with that nice Egyptian theme to it, then I would definitely suggest not just every other album before this one, but I would definitely suggest The Underworld Awaits Us All by Nile. It's gonna be some good shit right there. All right, next up is another recent addition to my library, Knock Loose. You won't go before you're supposed to. Now, like a few other bands in this list, I have heard of this band in passing, and I might have listened to bits and pieces of a few of their songs. And this is the first Knock Loose album that I sat down and listened to all the way through. I still need to go through, what was it, Different Shade of Blue and Laugh Tracks, I think, are some of the other ones that a lot of people seem to go nuts over. But they really don't hold up to this album in terms of people just going nuts over it. Like this is I think a lot of people started pay attention to Knock Loose with this album in particular. I mean, yeah, like I said, I kind of heard of them before this album dropped. But yeah, I should have been listening to these guys much sooner. Just no nonsense, hardcore, deathcore, and Brian Garris. He just sounds absolutely manic. Not just on this album, but pretty much every other album. From Knock Loose. Just I don't know what's going on in that man's mind when he gets in there in the vocal booth. He just sounds like he's having a really bad anxiety attack, and God love him for it. I mean, the vocals just absolutely fit with the band's sound. Let's see. Songs that I would definitely recommend from this album. Suffocate. I know it's the big one, and it's not because Poppy's on there. And yeah, believe it or not, I really don't listen to Poppy, so I really can't say much about her. But yeah, other than that, she actually does sound pretty good on this song. Let's see. Don't Reach for Me, Blinding Faith, which I think was one of the first singles for the album. Yeah, that one sounds pretty heavy too. And Sit and Mourn. So yeah, if you're just looking for some just heavy ass but spastic sounding hardcore or deathcore, then I would definitely recommend Knock Loose's You Won't Go Before You're Supposed to. Okay, there's no way I was gonna leave this one off my list. Brandon McKagan with the Trey Payne 2 Blade Kisser DLC. I mean, I've already gushed enough about Brandon McKagan on the 2023 albums of the year list, funds, favorites, whatever it is. Albums of 2023, whatever it was I called. I know I forgot to mention something about the Halloweener expansion soundtrack on there, or I think I might forgot to mention that, but if I did, go listen to that one too. Not quite as much as it doesn't really have as much as the original soundtrack, but there's still some pretty awesome songs in that one. And I can definitely say the same thing about this part of the soundtrack as well. Has pretty much all the hallmark stuff you'd come to expect from the Trey Payne 2 soundtrack. Just heavy ass guitars, just pummeling drums, all with the nice beat down kind of style. Maybe with some genty stuff here and there, but there's a lot of atmospherics that kind of back up a lot of these songs, and there's fair amount of atmospherics on some of the less heavier songs too. Let's see, songs I would recommend from this album here. Team Spirit. I really love that main riff on that song. Cave Party. I mean, you start playing that song, I'm gonna start pumping fists, and then I'm gonna start throwing fists once the main riff kicks off. Let's see, Subway. It's got a really nice, groovy, Meshuggah-esque thing going on. Have We Met? That one's pretty fun. Battle Worn Rest. It's much lighter sounding. Light Show. It's a great complimentary piece to the previous song, and Operators. So yeah, if you hadn't already seen my little snippet of my Blade Kisser shenanigans video, which I took some segments where I was just going nuts with the sword in that stream. But yeah, I would definitely recommend the Trey Payne 2 Blade Kisser expansion soundtrack by Brandon McKagan. And I would recommend the DLC as well. I just recommend the whole fucking game. Just if you guys are in the mood for some really awesome run and gun, old school worshiping first person shooters, and yeah, play some Trey Payne 2. I swear I did not get paid to say this. I'm saying this out of my own volition. I highly recommend all of this. That's some good shit right there. All right, next up we have Depths with Obsolescence. This album just kind of came out of nowhere for me, and honestly, really wasn't even sure if this band was even going to put out another album after what was it? Endless came out in 2018, I believe. But yeah, I've been listening to this band for a couple of years, for a few years now. Let's see, I think I started listening to these guys. What was it, Revelations, I think. Yeah, I think it was Revelation when that album came out. Yeah, I remember hearing the song Illumination, and then The Damned, Archetype, and The Basilisk. Yeah, that's some good shit right there. And then The Mortal Compass came out, which I think that album beats out Revelation. And then Endless dropped, and then they kind of dropped off the radar, and they didn't emerge, or rather re-emerge, until earlier this year. Started putting out some stuff for this album, and I kind of didn't even know that they were actually putting out a new album there. It just kind of caught me by surprise. And it was actually a very welcome surprise at that. Depths has just got some heavy ass down-tuned riffs. It seems to be it's like a recurring theme for this whole list. I just keep saying heavy ass riffs, and hey, there's nothing wrong with with some really solid riffs. I mean, that's my kind of stuff. But yeah, super down-tuned, a little bit progressive in a way, not quite Between the Buried and Me progressive, and definitely not Periphery type progressive, God forbid. That's another band I haven't listened to in a minute. No. But yeah, songs I would recommend from this surprise album here: Anemic, Neurosis, Misery, Bloodkeeper, Terrified. I love that opening chug and Terrified. Phantom, which actually does feature the main vocalist of Rendered Helpless and Organectomy, and Fatal. So yeah, bit of a surprise deathcore drop from this band, but one that I would still recommend nonetheless. Obsolescence by Depths. So kind of moving away from the deathcore bit to something a little bit more hardcore, we've got Kubla Khan with Exhibition of Prowess. Yeah, Kubla Khan is yet another band that I should have gotten into years ago, but I'm glad I got into him this year, actually. Or no, I think it was sometime late last year. I forget. No, but just heavy ass, beat down, hardcore goodness. That's all I can really say about Kubla Khan in general. Not just this album, but a lot of their other ones. New Strength, Nomad, which I love Nomad. Absolute, even the lowest form of Animal. It's all good shit right there. And this album is pretty much everything you come to expect with Kubla Khan. Just heavy riffing, just pounding drums, and then of course Matt Honeycutt just doing his thing, barking in the mic sometimes. I think it might be just for a live thing, but hey, it definitely adds to the to the overall greatness of this band. But yeah, songs I would recommend from here: Supreme Ruler, another intro for the album there that I would definitely recommend. Darwinism. You better listen to Matt when he says "bang your fucking head." You should. You should. Cannibal featuring Dave Peters of a Throwdown, and I was actually kind of surprised to see Throwdown still at it, and I love me some Throwdown. Let's see, X, or rather Straight Edge. It's a very short song. It's nice and fast, but it's got this heavy ass chuggy breakdown by the end, which that gets me going every time. I love it. Theory of Mine, which was the first single that they put out for this album that I didn't really expect them to make said album. Low Tech, Hopeless Fate featuring Jamie Josta of Hatebreed, and Ant Pile 2. It's funny that this song, to me, Ant Pile 2 is like the meme of, well, if Ant Pile's so good, how come there isn't an Ant Pile 2? I guess Kubla Khan had to answer that, and by God did they answer that so goddamn well with a pretty awesome album closer and a pretty awesome set closer too. So yeah, just straight up hardcore goodness. Really couldn't ask for much more from Kublai Khan with Exhibition of Prowess. All right, next up we have Cognizance Fantasian. I hope I said that one right. This is a bit of a new band for me, and believe it or not, I really didn't hear anybody talk about this album. Not even another YouTube channel that I've been following for a few years now, Thralls of Metal. Which, believe it or not, I've actually gotten some of my recommendations for some albums through that channel. So shout outs to Thralls of Metal. You know, you guys are awesome for turning me on to some absolutely awesome bands. But I'm actually kind of surprised you guys didn't look at this album. This one kind of flew under the radar. I feel. And believe it or not, YouTube in all of its rare wisdom decided to recommend this album, and I'm glad that it actually did, because this is some really tasty technical death metal. The tasteful kind of technical, not overall wankery shred fest like Archspire or Beneath the Massacre, even though I do love both those bands. This one's definitely a lot more tasteful, a bit more progressive-ish in a way. And I think the biggest selling point for this band is that David Diepold, I hope I said his last name right, plays drums on this album. If you don't know who that man is, go check him up on YouTube. He's got his own channel. He does some covers of some death metal tunes, and that dude is a fucking monster on the kit. That's all I can really say about him. Let's see, the guitars on this one, as I said, very tasteful, very technical. It's got some really awesome riffs and stuff going on. The vocals, while they are a little bit one-dimensional, they actually do fit the album very nicely. And hey, I do love some bands that do have vocalists that kind of stick to one particular range. The only one I could really think of, or the best example I can really think of off the top of my head, would have to be Jim Martin from Aegean. That dude, he dominates those low guttural vocals. Like, I mean, that's his territory. This guy, I say he's a little bit more low mid in a way, but he definitely owns that spot, just as well. Let's see, songs I would recommend from this album. Let's see, Ceremonial Vigor, A Brain Dead Memoir, Chiseled in Stone, Introspection, Shock Heuristics. I love those opening riffs, Shock Heuristics, Broadcast of the Gods, and Shadowgraph. I kind of like that sort of kind of almost bouncy sort of vibe to Shadowgraph with the technical riffing going on. But yeah, if you're looking for some really tasty progressive-ish technical death metal, then I would definitely recommend Fantasian. I'm pretty sure I fucked that up a couple times, but I recommend this album by Cognizance. Okay, so to avoid any confusion, since we just got done talking about Cognizance, we're going to be talking about Cognitive with Abhorrence. This is another band that I discovered this year, and I need to go back and listen to some of their older stuff. This band, it's a bit of a mostly death metal. It's got some deathcore elements, and hey, I love me some deathcore and death metal. I mean, that's kind of my wheelhouse. Well, I have several wheelhouses, but you'll see. Yeah, this is some great ferocious death metals. Got really tasty riff work. The drums are just absolutely killer. I believe the dude from Hath plays drums on this album. But I think the biggest thing about this album is the vocals. And I never really say this about any other album on here that's strictly death metal, but I think this has the most varied vocals that I've ever heard on a death metal album. And I don't mean varied as in like, okay, so this guy, he does, the lows, he does the gutturals, he does the mid stuff, he does the high stuff. No, when I say varied, he kind of takes from a couple of different camps of other vocal styles that other people do. Like the title track Abhorrence, on the chorus section, you hear him doing some like harsh singing that's kind of almost like a fit for an autopsy in a way. But the big thing on here is A Pact Unholy. which there's a section about a minute in where he goes full on Travis Ryan, cow decapitation, the goblin esque, you know, harsh vocals. Edge of breakup cleans. I just call those cattle vocals just because it's got a very distinct style to it, and I think this guy definitely nails that. And it works. It works beautifully on that song. Let's see songs I would recommend from this album. Let's see, I already mentioned Abhorrence. I mentioned A Pact Unholy. Savor the Suffering. That one's got some really fun riffs. Lunar Psychopathy and Cold Dead Hands. So yeah, if you're looking for just more straightforward deathcore-ish death metal with just ferocious riffs and a wide variety of vocals, then I would definitely recommend Abhorrence by Cognitive. Not Cognizance, all right? I just don't want to confuse anybody from the last album that we talked about with a album title that I struggle trying to pronounce, but this one's actually a lot easier. All right, next up we have Alluvial, Death is But a Door. Now, again, another band that I've heard in passing, but I really didn't listen to them until earlier this year when this EP dropped. Yeah, best thing I can really say about this band in general is the guitarist, Wes Hotch. That dude, he's an absolute monster. I know that this band was kind of the brainchild between him and Keith Marrow, which is another really phenomenal guitarist. But I think this originally started off as more of a instrumental death metal project. But I guess Keith had his own stuff going on, so he kind of handed the reins over to Wes, and then over the years it became its own thing. Releasing Sarcoma not long after that with a full lineup, and yeah, I absolutely love that album right there. But when it comes to this EP, this is kind of where it all started for me with Alluvial. It's just very tasty riff work, really great sounding drums, vocals. Again, kind of in that sort of same range, but still serves the songs very nicely. Um, mostly Kevin's vocals. I mean, Wes, he does some here and there, but it's more kind of harsh cleans, kind of along the lines of like Mastodon in a way. And hey, I love me some Mastodon. Let's see, songs I would recommend from this album: Bog Dweller, Area Code, but last but certainly not least, Fog Belt. When you start playing that song in particular, that opening riff with the whammy pedal guitar thing, that squeal, you'll know why I said that's definitely one of my favorite songs off this album, and one of my all-time favorite Alluvial songs altogether. So yeah, if you're wanting some tasty death metal with very tasty riff work, then I would definitely suggest Death is But a Door by Alluvial. So next up on my favorites list, we have Summoning the Lich, Under the Reviled Throne. Man, I absolutely love this band. I remember getting to these guys with their previous album, United in Chaos, and I absolutely love that album too. I still spin it regularly whenever I get a chance to. It's very tasty, technical death metal. May not be like overly technical, but the riffs kind of have that bit of technicality to them. And same thing with the drums. Uh, One thing that I think is actually pretty cool about this band in general is that all the lyrical concepts and everything it's from a little world that they've created, and these guys are like hardcore like medieval fantasy fans. And I just gotta say this, their vocalist, he's an absolute dude. I talk with him sometimes whenever I get a chance to. Well, me and a couple of buddies of mine, we talk with him more often than not, and he's a genuinely nice dude, very down to earth, yeah, and talented as hell. uh, but yeah, as much as I really loved United in Chaos, this album I think it beats it out just by a little bit. And all I could say is that the riffs have definitely gotten better, a lot tighter sounding, a bit more little bit more technical, but still the tasteful kind of technical. Yeah, there's just a lot of variance with the songs off this album compared to United and Chaos, and I love. I'd say at least half of that album, or at least as far as favorite songs go. But as far as favorite songs go for this album, I'd say it's kind of about the same, really. It's about a little over half of the songs in here, I'd say, are some of my favorites. Return to the Soil, The Forest Feasts, My Horrors Unending. That opening riff right there, if you do not start throwing hands when that riff kicks off, then there's something seriously wrong with you. Arius Groans, I hope I said that first one right. I think that's supposed to be the fictional world that this band has created. Will to Survive, Potion Seller, and Praise to the Bog. I mean, I don't know what it is about harmonized low string riffs, but when you do them right, it just gets me in such a way that's why I like bands like Black Dahlia Murder or Through the Eyes of the Dead, because when they do like low string harmonized riffs, whether it be like a major harmony or a minor kind of harmony, it just hits just right. And I think Praise of the Bog has some riffs like that in the chorus. It's just so good, as is the rest of this album. So it's no surprise that I would definitely recommend not just their previous album, but I would also recommend their current one, well, their latest one here, Under the Reviled Throne by Summoning the Lich. All right, so first off, I'm going to put a little blur up here just to kind of give you guys a little bit of time to prepare, because, yeah, the album art that I'm going to show you for this next album that I have on my favorites list, it's kind of gruesome. So just a little bit of a warning ahead of time, and it's going to be going away in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 200 stab wounds, manual manic procedures. Man, I remember getting into this band a few years ago with Slave to the Scalpel, and that album still holds up to this day. Old school death metal worship done right. It seems to be like a resurgence of, or rather a surgence of old school death metal worshiping bands, and I'm all here for it. I love me some good old school death metal when it's done right, and these guys, they do it right. uh it's this very schizophrenic riffing, not mathcore schizophrenic. It's just like there's a lot of variation with the riffs across well, their whole catalog, but by the time you get done, it gets done with one riff for like a few measures, and it quickly changes over to a different riff, and more often than not, it usually goes into a different tempo for said riff. So it gets a bit all over the place, but that's kind of part of the charm for 200 stab wounds. And also, ouch, that title alone for the band name. You think he would have been dead after the first 5 or so, well, depending on where you get him at first. But yeah, this album, I'd say it's definitely a little bit better in terms of production, at least, compared to Slave to the Scalpel. I mean, it's still kind of got that raw edge to it, which makes a lot of old school death metal worship albums like this one stand out. It's still have to have that bit of rawness, but at least they kind of clean it up a little bit. I'll tell you one thing, they need to clean up what's left of this guy as soon as the album's done. Poor guy. Let's see, songs I would recommend from this album. Hands of Eternity. It's got a really, really nice, like, old school Sepultura-ish kind of opening, somewhere along the lines of a Desperate Cry or Beneath the Remains. Let's see, Gross Abuse. Kind of love the riffs in that song right there. Release the Stench. Defiled Gestation. I kind of like that song right over there. It kind of makes me think a little bit about Carcass, namely the Necroticism album. I forget which song it was that kind of has an opening riff like that, where you get some heavy chugs and it kind of gets broken up by a little acoustic guitar bit, bookending some of those riffs, and then they start over again. Let's see, Ride the Flatline featuring Jamie Morgan from Code Orange. I know it's kind of weird having Code Orange make an appearance on a death metal album, but yeah, that's actually pretty cool. And I do listen to a bit of Code Orange. Well, namely, was it Underneath and Forever? Yeah, I think it's Forever was the album came out before that one. And let's see, Parasite, also another song I'd recommend off of this album. So yeah, if you're just looking for some absolutely gross looking, and it's bound to be as gross sounding, old school death metal worship, then I would highly recommend 200 Stab Wounds. Just don't do that to somebody. I would rather recommend you listen to the album Manual Manic Procedures instead. It's better for you and better for the other guy. All right, so we're gonna switch gears for a minute, and we're gonna talk about Jerry Cantrell with "I Want Blood." Well, by the time this year gets done, you'll have it. No. But it's no secret that I love me some Alice in Chains. They're probably one of my all-time favorite grunge bands. And grunge is something I really haven't listened to as much. I mean, it's been kind of a more recent ish thing over the past few years. I mean, Alice in Chains has always been one of those mainstays, but I started getting more into stuff like Soundgarden, Stone Temple Pilots. Started listening to a little bit of Pearl Jam and Nirvana, even though I really don't listen to that much Nirvana. But Alice in Chains has always stuck out to me for a damn good reason. Most of that is because of Lane Staley, rest in peace. But another really big part of that is this man right over here, Jerry Cantrell, the sole riff writer of Alice in Chains. The the embodiment of all those really dark, sinister sounding riffs. I'm not talking like death metal dark. I mean like just dark and brooding. Whenever he wants him to be, at least. I mean, this guy can mix it up a little bit, and yeah, this guy's got such a such a great taste in writing really awesome riffs, and I think I need to go back and listen to some of his other solo works after this. But going through this one, I mean, there's no way you can't, but I immediately started thinking of Alice in Chains just because of the signature riff writing of this man. And there are some other songs that definitely are straight up rockers, like the title track "I Want Blood." But yeah, for some of my other favorites on this album, "Vilified," "Off the Rails," "Echoes of Laughter," "Let It Lie," "Held Your Tongue," and "It Comes." Yeah, that last song, for some reason, I immediately started thinking about frogs. Well, the song off of the self-titled Alice in Chains album, not the actual animals themselves, but that's such an awesome song too. Yeah, if you're wanting some of that Alice in Chains spirit, then I would definitely suggest Jerry Cantrell's "I Want Blood." And by the time you get done with this album, you'll probably want some too. All right, next up we have Sitecore, "Make Me Real." Now, it's no secret, I love me some good industrial metal. The way I can describe these guys is that they're more like industrial melodic death metal. Two genres that I never really expected to go together so goddamn well. I got into these guys at around 2016 with their album Identity, and then yeah, going through that one, it's something just clicked with this band. I started liking a lot of their stuff, and then the Alliance came out, and then I was just like, yeah, that's some really good shit right there. And yeah, it wasn't until like several years or so after the Alliance dropped that we got ourselves a new full length here, "Make Me Real." And this one kind of went under my radar at first, but once I started seeing it pop up a little bit, I immediately jumped on this. And it was pretty much everything that I come to expect with Sitecore. Great industrial backdrops, just really tight melodic death metal style riffing. Great vocal hooks, whether it be the harsh stuff or some of the cleaner, kind of harsh, clean, broken up, clean kind of stuff. Yeah, this album is pretty much everything I come to expect from Psychcore, and it hasn't let me down. And I don't think this band's let me down in general. But yeah, songs I would definitely recommend from this album: Neoteric Gods, Pinnacle of Creation. That's probably one of my all-time favorite Psychcore songs right there. Make Me Real, another one of my all-time favorites from the band. Fragments, I'll Be Back, and Patient Zero. So yeah, if you're looking for some good melodic death metal, industrial metal, or melodeath industrial melodeath, I don't know how you can describe this. It's good music. Really, really, really good music. And that comes in the form of Make Me Real by Psychcore. And we're back once again with yet another twofer. This time it's the Dead Body Tribal Gaze Split EP. So we're going to start with Dead Body. Not a dead body. Presumably not the one from the 200 Stab Wounds album that I talked about just a little while ago. No, but I'm talking about the band Dead Body. And this one's a bit of a new one for me. And yeah, I should have been listening to these guys much sooner. Just frantic death metal. That's probably the best way I can describe. Oh, actually, there's another really good way I can describe this. And you only need to know like two names. Taylor Young and Colin Young. That's kind of all you need to know right there. Aside from the fact that those two play in Twitching Tongues, which is another band that I kind of listen to some more of, just to kind of see if I can really get into them a little bit. But yeah, this is a straight up ferocious sounding death metal. I'd say Taylor's vocals, he's got that hardcore gruffness to him, but he kind of, there's some times where he kind of sounds a little bit like Chuck Schuldiner from Death, and all-time great death metal band, not just because the name Death is in there. Nah, but see, songs I would recommend from the Dead Body side would be Six Shot Saved, Pleonexia, I hope I said that one right, and Dead Body 2. So flipping over to the Tribal Gaze side of things, I'm probably going to be gushing about this band a lot more because I love me some Tribal Gaze. They're probably one of my all-time favorite old school death metal worship bands ever. I got into these guys not long after they put out their full length, the 9 Choirs, and I love absolutely every single song off of that album. You know, whether it be a Cold Devotion, was it Shapeless Sovereign, Jungle Rituals, and For They Wept for All Eternity. I think that's what that one was. I'm stammering on some of the words here today. I don't know what's wrong with me. Worthless Offering. There's a lot of really, really awesome stuff off of that album. And there's some pretty awesome songs off this album too. Though I kind of feel like Tribal Gaze kind of got the short end of the stick here, or maybe they only had just the 3 songs to kind of fill out the rest of this EP here, or album, or whatever it is you want to call it. But they're all really, really good songs. But the 2 that I would definitely recommend would be Let His Servant Starve and Twitching on the Cross. So yeah, 2 schools of old school death metal worship come together for an absolutely amazing album, the Dead Body Tribal Gaze Split. All right, so next up we have a little bit of a underground death metal band that has just come back in recent years, and I did not know that these guys have been around back in the day. And when I mean back in the day, I'm talking like late 80s, early 90s. And that would be Suffer, Grand Canvas of the Aesthete. And I hope I said that last word right, because that's the first time I've ever heard of that word. Okay, so how best to describe this album? I got something. Remember when I said on my 2023 albums list that Fester Decay's Reality Rotten to the Core is carcass worship a la Symphonies of Sickness? This band, on the other hand, is carcass worship a la Necroticism, Heartwork, Surgical Steel, and Torn Arteries. what many consider to be the best era of Carcass. I mean, it's kind of debatable if you're more of a grindcore fan or if you're more of a straight up death metal fan. And honestly, I'm more of a straight up death metal fan. Those other albums that I mentioned by Carcass are probably some of my all time favorites, especially Heartwork and Surgical Steel. And this band definitely draws a lot of influences from some of those other Carcass albums, and I'm here for every single minute of it. From the guitars to the guitar tones, the way that the riffs are played, and even the vocal cadences on here, or just the vocals in general, all have that modern Carcass vibe to them. And honestly, I don't think these guys could have pulled it off any better than this. It's it's uh it's a god tier record from a relatively unknown band, or at least unknown to me until earlier this year. This is one that I really need to start digging through their catalog and listen to some of their older stuff. Just try to round up my catalog a little bit. Give me some more awesome death metal. Let's see, songs I would definitely recommend, and a lot of these are definitely going to sound like not only did the riffs were the riffs inspired by Carcass, but also the songs themselves were inspired by Carcass, or at least the song titles were. Let's see, Plentiful, Copious, Bountiful, Inhaling Caustic Foray, Carnal Flesh Parade. I mean, I don't know what it is about that song in particular, but the section about in the middle of the song where the entire song just slows down and you get this like dual melodic lead going on. That section always gives me goosebumps. I don't know what it is, but and Pernicious Precarious Mess and Human Primal Cuts, or is it Primal Human Cuts? I forget. The last song off that album. It's just there's a lot of really awesome like modern Carcass worship songs scattered throughout this whole album, and this is one that I have no problem recommending whatsoever. Grand Canvas of the Aesthete by Suffer. At least I know you ain't gonna suffer through this album though, because let me tell you, there's some really awesome songs to listen to off this album. And I mean it. There's some really awesome shit on here. All right, next up we have Hideous Divinity, Unextinct. I remember getting into these guys at around 2018 when their album Advenians came out. I was going on one of my Spotify dives, something I haven't done in a very long time, or haven't really considered in a very long time, actually, because YouTube and Bandcamp exist. And these artists deserve better than what they're getting on Spotify, but that's just me. No, but I discovered these guys through Spotify, just going on a bit of a dive, looking for some more good death metal to add to the collection. Abysmal Torment came up. These guys came up. I'm trying to remember who else came up. But yeah, I sat down and listened to Advenians, and I was just like, ooh, really tasty, very sinister sounding technical death metal, or technical brutal death metal. And they came out with the Simulacrum not long after that, and they started getting a little bit more atmospheric, touch more progressive in some places, but I really love that album too. And then just this year, they came out with Unextinct, which I think is the best of both worlds. Well, for the previous two albums, you get that sinister riff work that carries itself throughout a lot of these songs, and there's a lot more atmospheric moments on here, and they have their fair share of interludes throughout the album. But we're here for just absolutely ferocious, technical, brutal death metal, as you'll hear with some songs such as the Numinous one, Against the Sovereignty of Mankind, Atto Quarto, The Horror Paradox. I don't know what it is about that song in particular, but I think that song has some of the most sinister riffs off the entire album. It's just I just really love that song though. And More Than Many never won. So yeah, if you're looking for some really tasty technical brutal death metal straight out of the heart of Italy, then I would highly, highly, highly recommend Unextinct by Hideous Divinity. All right, next up we have another band that I should have been listening to a long time ago, Benighted, Ekbom. Ah, God, just still sticking with the whole technical brutal death metal, or actually just straight up brutal death metal goodness. That's probably the best way I can describe it. Now, actually, there's a better way I can describe this band in general. It's like the long lost brother of Aborted. I know a lot of people tend to bring up Aborted whenever Benighted gets brought up, and there's a damn good reason for it. A lot of the riffs and stuff, it's definitely very, very Aborted like in a way. You know, you just got crazy riffing, crazy drum work, crazy vocals. I'd probably say Julian's maybe just a little bit more varied compared to Sven. Even though I love Sven DeCalloway, I love his vocals because I mean he's got his own thing going on, and so does Julian. But that doesn't disqualify this album at all. I mean, this is just ferocious. I This is another band that I've heard of in passing, but I didn't really start listening to them until actually a few weeks ago, believe it or not. I mean, I sat down and listened to a little bit of this album, and then I kind of went back through their catalog. And then I eventually picked up Carnivore Sublime, Necrobreed, Obscene Repressed, and then this album right over here. Might need to go a little bit further back than that with Asylum Cave, Icon, and Identisic, or I don't know what other albums I had before all that, but yeah, really, really awesome brutal death metal. Let's see, songs I would probably recommend off of here. Scars, really killer opener. Kind of makes me think a little bit about TerrorVision in a way. It definitely makes me think about TerrorVision. I apologize that I'm probably gonna butcher this next song title since I don't since I'm not French, but Le Vice de Entrailles, which I believe that translates to the vice of entrails. I actually had to run that through a translator just to make sure, but yeah. Nothing Left to Fear, featuring Ollie Ray from Archspire. That song was tailor made for Ollie Ray. I mean, you hear the opening of that, and you're just thinking, yeah, this definitely does sound like it was made strictly for Ollie Ray of Archspire. Ekbom got a really, really cool opening drum groove right there. Scapegoat, and the album closer, Mother Earth, Mother Whore. Wow, what a song title. Uh, yeah, really, really awesome brutal death metal out of the heart of France from Benighted with Ekbom. All right, so now let's talk about Benighted's brother from another Belgian mother, Aborted, Vault of Horrors. Now, I already done a little video going over this whole album. I didn't play any of the songs on there for you guys to listen to because well, I was a bit worried about YouTube's whole copyright thing, about how that thing is being abused to no end. But let me tell you guys something. The reactions there are all as genuine as you can get. I absolutely loved this album from start to finish. I mean, if you needed an idea of what it's like, I mean, you can look it up on my channel. I pretty much break down a lot of the songs that I've heard and just pretty much tell you what my favorites are and whatnot. And I think there might have been one change here and there, or maybe I just forgot to write it down. But I'll just list off some of my favorites here, anyways. And this is gonna be quick. Brotherhood of Sleep, Death Cult, Hellbound, Shape of Hate, and Malevolent Haze. That's those are my favorites off this album. And I also have to say is that I think of all the Aborted albums in the entire catalog, this one has the most guest features I've ever seen on an album. And I know Aborted does have its fair share of guest appearances on some albums though, but I think these guys went all out for this album in particular. Well, with the exception of Infinite Terror, which that doesn't have a guest vocalist because I think that was originally released as a single, but then got relegated as a bonus track for this album. But hey, I still love that song too. and just as much as I love this whole album, and just as much as I love damn near every single album by this band. But yeah, Vault of Horrors by Aborted. Definitely a high recommendation for me. Okay, so we've only got 4 more albums to go for this list, and the reason why I wanted to bring it back over to this screen for a minute is because these last 4 albums are special. These are comeback albums, in my honest opinion. And we're gonna start this one with what I consider to be the most bittersweet of the 4. And we're starting this one off with Oceano, Living Chaos. Man, I was not sure if this band was even going to put out another album after 2017's Revelations, but I love me some Oceano. They're probably one of my all-time favorite deathcore bands. I was lucky enough to see these guys live twice. Once in, I think, 2009 or 2010, or somewhere right around in there, and then once again in I think it was like 2011, 2012, somewhere in there. I don't remember exactly when. I know it was somewhere in those ballparks, but those dudes absolutely killed it every single time. But yeah, I love this band to this day. Depths is still a landmark album for this band. Let's see. Mandatory Sacrifice, Samael the Destroyer, District of Misery. That's the song that a lot of people name check whenever they mention something about Oceano. With Legions, Slaughtered Like Swine, Empathy for Leviathan. A lot of really awesome songs off that record. And then Contagion came out a few years afterwards. That album, I think, is one of the most underrated Oceano albums in the entire catalog. And then they came out with Incisions, which I really didn't listen to that album that much. I kind of had some issues with the production on that album, but I might go back and give it another go. Just see if I can try to get past some of that to listen to some of the songs on there. And then Ascendance came out a few years after that, and then we had Revelations, which I think that was probably better than Ascendance, in my opinion. And then they just kind of dipped off the radar for several years until somewhat recently in the past few years where they came out with a single and everybody collectively lost their shit in a good way. I was one of those people that lost their shit in a good way because as soon as I heard that song, I was just like, oh, yeah, these guys are coming out swinging. And then it was not long after that that they announced, hey, we're coming back with a brand new album. And that is what we have here today, Living Chaos. All I can really say about this album is that this kind of picks up from where Revelations left off. You know, you still got the heavy riffing, you still got the atmospheric stuff thrown in, whether it be the spacey stuff or some synthy stuff, and then of course you got Adam Warren doing what he does best. You know, I mean, I'll admit, Adam, he kind of was a bit of an acquired taste for me at first when I was starting to get into this band, but over time, he really started to grow on me, and it became like a big part of Oceano's sound. Well, I mean, as far as the whole growing on me thing is concerned, it's mostly his highs, but I mean, I took to that pretty well actually. So yeah, like I said, this album pretty much picks up from where Revelations left off. You know, it's pretty much got everything that you come to expect from Oceano and then some. So, songs I would definitely recommend from this album. Let's see, Wasted Life, Mass Produced, which was the song for the album and the one that they dropped as a single. Into the Flames, Wounds Never Healed. You know, I wasn't sure if I was actually going to like Wounds Never Healed, but over time, that one started to grow on me too. And Price of Pain. And yeah, those are some songs that I genuinely like off this album. Unfortunately, a couple of months or so, or yeah, several months or so after this, yeah, I'll just say not long after this album came out, that Adam decided he wanted to call it quits. If I remember right, there was an upcoming tour with Oceano, Dealer, and Attila, I believe, and then a lot of people jumped on Oceano like, "Hey, why are you going on this tour with these other two bands? Yeah, don't you know that they're not good people or something other? I mean, honestly, I really don't know the whole backstory between both of the other bands. I really don't care to get into that kind of stuff, but whatever it was, Adam, he just say, you know what, fuck this, I'm out, and that's basically it. That's basically the end of Oceano, and it really sucks though. I mean, these guys were geared to come back, and I mean they kind of came back and gave us a really awesome album, and then you know people started jumping on this band, and then Adam decided I'm done, and I think he even says something about it on a like a little blog thing that he has on his own channel, Adam on Earth, where he said he's pretty much done doing music, or at least doing music like this. But he said he kind of wanted to branch out and do some other things. And you know what? More power to you, Adam. You were just an absolutely killer vocalist. It sucks that this is what it ultimately led to, but I mean, if this is the path you decide to go down, then I just want to say thank you for helping create some just absolutely amazing music with Oceano. And whatever you decide to do in the future, man, I just hope you're happy with it, man. I mean, I just wish you nothing but the best. But yeah, I would definitely recommend at this point the band's final album, Living Chaos by Oceano. All right, next up on the list of kind of bittersweet comeback albums, we have the Black Dahlia Murder with Servitude. Yeah, another band that I really wasn't sure if they was even going to release another album, especially after the tragic loss of original vocalist Trevor Strnad, and yeah, that shit still hurts to this day. It still hurts for a lot of us. I mean, that's never a good way to go, if I got to be honest with you. But yeah, it just felt a great disturbance in the force that day. It was a sad day for a lot of us, and of course, since then, none of us were even sure if the band was even going to be able to continue without Trevor. But from some godforsaken miracle, the band decided to continue onwards, and I'm glad that they did. I'm really glad that they did. Brian Escobar, who's been there since the beginning of the band, he decided to step down from guitars and take over on vocals. And this means the guitar spot went over to Ryan Knight, who rejoined the band after leaving not long after Abysmal came out. And yeah, the dynamic duo between Brandon Ellis and Ryan Knight. I mean, you're expecting greatness from those two. I mean, they're both absolutely killer guitarists. And I got to give credit to Brian. Those are some big fucking shoes to fill. But if you've been in the band for as long as he has, you kind of got to know the little nuances of Trevor's style, and how he conducts himself, figuratively and literally, in the band. No, but Brian, he does a hell of a job on vocals here on this album. I mean, he doesn't sound exactly like Trevor, but he's kind of trying to keep that spirit alive, and that's very commendable. I think he does a really good job there. I mean, of course, there's no replacing Trevor, but I don't think he's really trying to replace Trevor. Kind of like how that one chick is trying to replace Chester Bennington, but that's a whole different story right there. Um, anyways, Black Dahlia Murder, probably one of the most noteworthy melodic death metal bands that come out of the United States. This is a band that I've listened to a little bit early on in the years, but I started listening to them more and more. And it's not because of the whole, tragic passing of Trevor. All right, don't get that twisted. All right, I've been listening to these guys a little bit more even before all that. So, yeah, don't come out here and call me a was it a bandwagoner or whatever it is, just because like, oh yeah, I started listening to this band after this guy or after this one guy immediately died or whatever. I'm not like that. No, I'm just here for some good music. And these guys, they put out some damn good music. Some of my favorites off this album would have to be Evening Ephemeral, Panic Hysteric, Aftermath, Cursed Creator, Servitude, and Utopia Black. So, yeah, this album is pretty much everything you come to expect from the Black Dahlia Murder. Nothing more, nothing less. Servitude by the Black Dahlia Murder. A hell of a comeback album. It's not going to be the same without Trevor, but I wish these guys the best from here on out as well. Good job, Brian. Good job. The mother of all comeback albums, in more ways than one, Opeth, The Last Will and Testament. Well, actually, I shouldn't call this a comeback album. I should call this more of a welcome back album. Particularly, welcome back Micah Oddfeld and his growls. That is something a lot of us have missed with Opeth. Now, kind of getting into my bit of brief history with Opeth, I heard a few songs from these guys about, 2007, 2008-ish or so. I think I heard The Grand Conjuration, which is still one of my all-time favorite Opeth songs. And then Lotus Eater, which another one of my all-time favorites. And then I decide, just out of curiosity, I'll dive through a catalog and see what they got. And then Blackwater Park, Deliverance and Damnation, the rest of Ghost Reveries and Watershed, and then Still Life, My Arms, Your Hearse. There is a lot of really, really good stuff to listen to from this band. And then they made that hard shift to being more progressive rock with Heritage and Pale Communion. I think a lot of people really didn't care for Pale Communion all that much. And actually, I think I need to go back to those other two albums just to check them out for myself. But some of their other stuff that they came out with after all that, Sorceress, which I think was one of the two kind of more prog rock Opeth albums that I've got, and I actually like that one quite a bit. And then their more recent-ish one, Incauda Venium. I hope I said that one right. It still has that kind of prog rockish sort of vibe. And then I guess Michael had a bit of an epiphany in recent years, thinking, you know what? I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready to get back on the mic and just start roaring at people again. And here I was thinking, whenever they put out their first single, which is simply called Section 1, I thought it was just going to be that one song where he was only going to be doing just like a little bit of growling and have it be mostly clean vocals. But as I went deeper and deeper into this album, section by section, like literally almost all these songs, well, except the last song, are all called sections. Section 1, Section 2, Section 3, so on and so forth. Nah. Best way I can describe this album in particular, this album feels like the spiritual successor, or well, rather, I shouldn't say spiritual successor, I should say the next step after Watershed. That's probably the best way I can really describe this album, is like, it's like you take after Watershed, but you want to implement some more prog rockish kind of stuff. And God, I think this album is up there with with some of their best, in my honest opinion. There was a point where I was actually starting to write down some songs on here that I consider to be my favorites. I mean, I think I originally had sections 1, 3, 4, 6, and 7. And the last song, A Story Never Told, as my favorites. But I'd say, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to wipe that thing clean and just throw a dart at this album. Whatever it lands on, yep, just listen to this whole album. This is like a return to form for Opeth, in my honest opinion. It's got all the crazy progressive metal and progressive rock riffs that you would ever want. Really, really cool keyboard sections. some nice flutes by what's the guy's name, Ian Anderson, and I think he also provides some spoken word bits throughout parts of the album, kind of reading off the last will and testament throughout all those sections of the song, or the songs rather. Yeah, this is a damn fine comeback album for this band. So yeah, I would highly, highly, highly recommend The Last Will and Testament by Opeth. Welcome back, Michael's Growls. Welcome back. We missed you. Okay, so with that, we only have one more album to go, and I know a lot of you are probably asking, is he gonna talk about that one album there? Well, I'm just happy to say that after 10 years, I finally get to talk about Job for a Cowboy, Moon Healer. Man, I love me some Job for a Cowboy. Whether it be their more humble deathcore beginnings with the Doom EP, the going straight up death metal with Genesis, putting in a little bit of technicality with Ruination, ramping up the technicality with Demonocracy, or even going full blown progressive death metal with Sun Eater. This band does not miss. Like, I don't know how these guys do it. You know, it seems like you go further and further along in their catalog as they slowly start to evolve their sound. They get progressively better and better and better. It's like this band ages like a fine wine. And this album right here is an absolutely killer follow-up to what many people consider to be the band's magnum opus. And you know what? I agree that Sun Eater is definitely one of, if not the band's best entries in their whole catalog. So, how exactly can I describe Moon Healer? Well, I think I should talk a little bit about Sun Eater first. See, to me, Sun Eater is the perfect death metal dish made with only the finest ingredients. You got this big, juicy slab of meat making up the guitars and drums. You got a nice assortment of fresh cut vegetables for the bass to give the songs some very interesting textures. Carefully selected herbs and spices for the leads to give the songs some more pizzazz. You know, impart a lot of amazing flavors, and it's all in this really, really nice, rich, atmospheric broth, and it's all topped with the death metal vocal garnish. Moon Healer, on the other hand, it's that same exact dish, but the meat was left to marinate just a little bit longer to make it a lot more tender, a lot more succulent. And it was left in the oven just a few minutes more just to make the top a little bit more crispier. I do apologize if I made anybody hungry when I was describing these two albums. If so, please go get you something to eat. You deserve it just as much as we deserved this absolutely amazing follow-up to an absolutely amazing album. Like, favorite songs, there's a lot of really, really awesome songs to go through on this album, but ones that I would pick personally, I'd say Beyond the Chemical Doorway, The Sun Gave Me Ashes, So I Sought Out the Moon, Into the Crystalline Crypts, The Agony Seeping Storm, and then the album closer, which I think between Tarnished Gluttony and Warming Nightfall, this is the better of the three, in my honest opinion. The Forever Rot. Like, that, the way that song closes out the album is just, yeah, you know what? I got no problem recommending this album. Just go listen to it. You know, go listen to all the other Job for a Cowboy albums. You know what? Just listen to all the other albums that I mentioned in this list of fun and favorite albums for 2024. You're not gonna regret a single second of it. Believe me. All right, so that does it with my fun and favorites of 2024. I'm sure there's probably a couple albums that I might have missed. If there's any that you guys want me to check out, feel free to let me know down in the comments below, and I'll try to get back to those. And let's just hope that 2025 has some really killer albums for us. I can't wait, and hopefully you guys can't either. So until then, thank you guys for watching this. Please check out all the albums that I mentioned, and you guys, hope you guys enjoy those albums, and I hope you guys enjoy this video. So until then, you have a really awesome rest of 2024. Merry Christmas and all that other good shit. So I'll see y'all next year.